What if the man who redefined technology looked at Apple today and felt disgusted? I mean, picture it. Steve Jobs walks into Apple Park right now. He sees the $3,500 Vision Pro, the 7 different dongles for your MacBook, AirPods that cost more than rent in some states, and a brand new iPhone that looks exactly like the last 3. He'd probably raise one eyebrow, squint a little, and say, "Who turned my revolution into a fashion show?" Because today's Apple, it's less about changing the world and more about selling you a shinier box every September. But here's the twist. If Steve Jobs were alive today, running Apple in 2025, in the middle of AI disruption, antitrust lawsuits, and a generation glued to TikTok, what would he actually do? Would he kill the iPhone, cancel the Vision Pro, or finally give us the product we've all been waiting for? The truth is, what Steve would do differently might just change everything. And once you see it, you'll never look at Apple the same again. Jobs' core values. Let's rewind for a second. Before we talk about where Apple's going, we need to understand who Steve Jobs really was, because Apple wasn't just a company under him. It was a belief system, a religion of simplicity, beauty, and total control. Steve Jobs wasn't your average CEO. He wasn't looking at focus groups or asking customers what they wanted. In fact, he famously said, "People don't know what they want until you show it to them." And he meant it. He didn't follow trends. He set them. He didn't listen to the market. He shaped it. Steve had this obsession with design, but not just pretty design, functional design, elegant simplicity. He once told his team, "Design is not just what it looks like and feels like. Design is how it works." And from that philosophy came icons. The iPod with just a click wheel, the iPhone with no keyboard, the iMac with no floppy drive and no mess. Every move seemed radical at the time, but history made him look like a genius. And make no mistake, Steve wasn't some friendly, warm boss. He was ruthless. If a product wasn't perfect, he'd kill it. If a teammate didn't match his vision, he'd cut them loose. He had what his team called the reality distortion field. Jobs could convince people that the impossible was simply the next step. He would walk into a room with an idea no one believed in and walk out with 20 engineers building it as if it were the only thing that mattered. Because under Jobs, Apple didn't compromise. It controlled everything. The hardware, the software, the marketing, even the screws inside the device were custom designed. That level of control created a seamless experience. You didn't use an Apple product. You felt it. You trusted it. It became a part of you. He once said, "I want to put a ding in the universe," and somehow he did. Now pause for a moment. Think about that kind of energy, this bold, almost spiritual commitment to excellence. He was influenced by Zen Buddhism. He valued clarity, focus, and the art of saying no. And here's the wild part. Steve made moves that seemed completely illogical at the time, but they worked. He removed the floppy drive from Macs in 1998. Everyone panicked. Now, nobody uses them. He took away the physical keyboard from phones. People laughed. Then the iPhone changed the world. He insisted on vertical integration, total control over software and hardware. Critics said it would slow Apple down. It actually made them unstoppable. These weren't just product decisions. They were Steve Jobs' decisions, because to him, the product wasn't the goal. The product was the portal to a better world. And that's why understanding Steve's values isn't just nostalgia. It's the key to seeing how Apple today might have taken a very different path if he was still around. Apple, in 2025, what's changed? Under Tim Cook, Apple became the first $3 trillion company in history. Let that sink in for a second. From garage startup to economic superpower. But here's the question nobody's asking. What did we lose in the process? Because today's Apple, it looks polished, profitable, powerful, but it doesn't look like Steve's Apple anymore. Take a step back and really look at it. Apple's most viral product last year wasn't a new invention, a revolutionary tech. It was a $19 polishing cloth. That's not innovation, that's merch. And what used to be a company that led culture now milks it. Need to charge your phone? That's another $20. Want faster data transfer? Buy a dongle. Headphones? Not included. Charging brick, sold separately. Stand for your $5,000 monitor. Oh, that'll be $999. No, really. Even Steve Jobs would have blinked twice at that one. But this isn't just about overpriced accessories. It's about a shift in philosophy. Steve's mantra was make insanely great products. Now it feels like Apple's mantra is make products, charge insanely. And while Jobs made bets, killing floppy drives, removing keyboards, launching the iPhone when no one believed, it was all in the name of creating the future. But Apple today feels like it's playing defense. The Vision Pro, a rebranded VR headset with Apple Gloss and a $3,500 price tag. Beautiful, sure, but truly new, not really. There's no one more thing moment anymore. No magic, just safe upgrades, recycled designs, and iterative models with 1 or 2 tweaks, marketed like revolutions. It's like watching Picasso become a brand ambassador for wallpaper. And don't even get me started on services. Here's a stat that'll blow your mind. Apple now makes more money from services, Apple TV Plus, iCloud, Apple Music, AppleCare, than it does from Macs or iPads. Think about that. The world's greatest product company now makes most of its profit from subscriptions. We've gone from think different to Think recurring billing, from building tools that empower creators to monetizing every possible pixel of their ecosystem. Steve was obsessed with the product. Now, it feels like Apple's obsessed with the spreadsheet. You can almost picture Tim Cook in a boardroom saying, how can we increase ARPU per region while maintaining high LTVs across our services funnel? And somewhere in the afterlife, Steve Jobs just flips over a black turtleneck in silent protest. Let's be honest, Apple today is richer, safer, and more stable than ever, but it's also a little boring. And if Steve Jobs walked back into Apple Park in 2025, he'd probably look around and say, what happened to us? And maybe, just maybe, he'd do something no one expects. What would Steve do differently? Steve Jobs wasn't just a product designer. He was a visionary, a founder, a madman with taste. And if he were alive today, watching Apple from the sidelines, chances are he'd be furious. Because here's the truth, Steve didn't build Apple to play it safe. He built it to challenge reality. And today's Apple, it feels like it's optimizing spreadsheets, not dreams. This isn't a product, this is a prototype. Take it back. That's what Steve would have said the moment he laid eyes on the Vision Pro. Not because it's bad, but because it's not radical, not intuitive, not magical, just a bulky headset trying to catch up to a trend. Under Jobs, Apple didn't follow the market, it bent it. He would have ripped through the current product line like a scalpel through butter. Kill the AirPods Max? Probably. iPhone 15 with a slightly better camera? Cut. Redesign iOS from scratch? Absolutely. Why? Because today's Apple is cluttered. Look at iOS. Too many swipes, too many layers, too much noise. Jobs once said, simple can be harder than complex. You have to work hard to get your thinking clean. That philosophy is missing. Today's UI is designed by committee, not conviction. And AI. Steve wouldn't just plug ChatGPT into Siri and call it innovation. He'd start at the root. How should a machine feel when it talks to a human? He wouldn't build a chatbot, he'd build a companion, a digital layer that understands context, emotion, intention. You don't slap AI onto Siri. You teach Siri to know you better than you know yourself. That's the kind of thinking Steve lived for, reimagining the interface between humans and technology. It's not about faster processors or bigger screens. It's about creating a product so natural, you forget it's a product. Imagine the Apple car under Jobs. No steering wheel, no dashboard, just one glass surface. Minimal, intuitive, breathtaking. It wouldn't just drive, it would feel like it was reading your mind, because Jobs understood something no focus group ever could. Design is not just what it looks like. Design is how it works and how it makes you feel. Ask ex-Apple engineers and they'll tell you. Jobs made decisions that didn't make sense until they did. No floppy disk? Insane. Until everyone copied it. No physical keyboard? Ridiculous. Until it became the standard. One button for the iPhone? Too simple. Until it changed everything. Jobs thrived at the intersection of technology and the liberal arts. He didn't want gadgets. He wanted tools for human expression. Today, Apple builds features. Jobs built philosophies. And if he were here now, he wouldn't be chasing AI hype. He'd be reinventing what AI even means. Where would Apple be now? Let's imagine the alternate timeline. Steve Jobs is still at the helm of Apple in 2025. What does that world look like? First off, forget the current product lineup. Under Jobs, Apple wouldn't be shipping 4 slightly different iPhones a year with minimal changes and confusing names like Pro Max Ultra Titanium Edition. There'd likely be one iPhone, one that did everything insanely great. Jobs believed in radical simplicity. In his world, if a product needs a user manual, it's broken. So instead of cluttering shelves with redundant devices, he'd simplify. But that simplicity wouldn't mean fewer innovations. It would mean bolder ones. We'd probably be seeing things like a paper-thin, foldable iPad that's powered by AI and actually replaces your laptop, an Apple Pencil that learns your drawing style and evolves with you, a Mac that knows what you're trying to create before you even finish typing, or maybe even the world's first mass-market neural interface, so you don't just interact with Apple devices, you merge with them. Sound insane? Well, so did a glass phone in 2007. Now here's the real kicker. Apple still hasn't released a large language model, not even one. Meanwhile, Google and Meta have launched at least 6 each. Steve wouldn't just be disappointed, he'd probably be disgusted, because Jobs saw AI not as a marketing buzzword or a feature to bolt onto Siri, but as a revolution. He'd push to rebuild every device around artificial intelligence, not just sprinkle it on top. Siri wouldn't be a glorified voice search assistant. It would be a digital extension of your brain, a proactive, context-aware guide that thinks like you, learns with you, and helps you create, not just consume. And services? Jobs was allergic to subscriptions for subscription's sake. Would Apple still offer iCloud, Apple Music, and TV Plus? Sure, but the company's core identity would be tools that empower creators, not revenue funnels for Wall Street. Imagine if Apple had built a privacy-first social network, fully integrated with iOS, with no ads, no data collection, just clean, fast, human-centered interaction, or a platform where artists, coders, musicians, and designers could collaborate with AI in real time. Something Something like Final Cut Pro meets GPT meets Jobs' love for Pixar, but perhaps the biggest difference would be the philosophy. Steve would never let Apple become reactive. He wouldn't follow trends, he'd invent them. While today's Apple cautiously tiptoes into AI behind closed doors, Jobs' Apple would have already made the first AI native phone and made sure the rest of the industry had to play catch up. Let's be honest, Apple under Jobs would be building the future of human-machine interaction, not subscriptions, not dongles, not just thinner bezels. You don't build tools that make people depend on you. You build tools that make them more of themselves. That's the world we missed when Jobs left the stage. Legacy and final message. Steve Jobs didn't just build products, he built philosophies. His legacy wasn't the iPhone or the Mac, it was how he thought. He stripped away everything unnecessary until only the soul of the idea remained. I'm as proud of what we don't do as I am of what we do. That wasn't branding fluff, it was strategy. Jobs cut products not for cruelty, but for clarity. He knew clarity is a competitive advantage. His obsession wasn't speed, it was purpose. Today, founders chase scale, speed, subscribers. Jobs chase soul. Technology for him was a mirror, a way to amplify who we are. So if you're creating something, ask not, what would Steve Jobs do? Ask, what would I do? With his clarity, fire, and refusal to settle, maybe the world doesn't need another Steve Jobs. It needs you, clear, obsessed with excellence, unafraid to say no. Be that crazy. Be clear. Build your legacy. And if you want to see how Leonardo da Vinci would invest Bitcoin in 2025, hit that subscribe and click here. You won't want to miss this secret strategy. I'll see you there.